Here we go, guys. Welcome to Writing Challenges. This is the January writing workshop today. And there's going to be, I want to kind of preface this, there's going to be a two-part to this. The first part, or the majority of it, we're going to be talking about the challenges that authors face or writers face when going through the process of writing and creating their work. But I'm also going to flip it. The title has a double meaning. We will be talking about actual writing challenges. And there are some that I've been participating in for the last couple of years. And I like to promote that as much as I possibly can. And so, because I think they're a great avenue for writers to get involved with. So here's our agenda for today. Hopefully it's not too terribly blurry.
I can't see it at all.
That's okay. I will go through it. I picked colors that I thought would be fun. Didn't think about how they would look on screen. So I apologize, John. But so I'm going to go through my introduction for those of you who are new. I'll talk about the top 5 challenges that most authors face, some possible solutions, actual writing challenges, and then I do have a writing prompt, as I usually do at the end of every class, and then we'll conclude. So for those of you who are new, and for those of you joining on the live stream, my name is Garrett K. Jones. I'm a local author. I have a Bachelor's of Arts in Creative Writing. I have a 5-book series currently out called The Archives of a Secret Ran. It's a fantasy series. If you don't want to buy a copy, which is kind of a bummer for me, you can find copies down in the library in the sci-fi and fantasy collection. I also co-host a couple of podcasts. Storytellers is one that I do independently. I also participate in a podcast called War of the Stars, which is a Star Wars podcast because I like Star Wars. I've been doing that for a couple of years now. And then I also host a show on YouTube called The Right Way, where we talk book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. And so next Saturday is actually my 250th episode, so I'm looking forward to that. So that's a little self-plug there. One of my favorite genres is science fiction. I read a lot of science fiction, but I read very widely, and I recommend that if you want to be a writer, you should as well. Everyone has their favorite stuff that they like to read, but it's good to get a variety of different content out there because who knows what you'll pull inspiration from. So with that being said, we're going to move on to our top 5 challenges. It's okay, it happens. All right. So our first challenge that every writer has to deal with is marketing and distribution. Okay, marketing and distribution. This is where a lot of self-published authors struggle because we have to often market and distribute our books ourselves without the established networks that long established and very popular publishing houses have. We don't have the resources of traditional publishers. So, like, think about the publishers that are out there, like Random House, Penguin, Bantam Books, Scholastic. Any of those major publishers, they have a lot of resources because they've been doing this for well over a century. They know what they're doing. They understand the business. Now, there are small press publishers that are more independent, they're more indie, and they're a little bit more friendly, and sometimes you have to kind of work. They might have some resources, but they may not have all the same resources. But when you're self-publishing, this is one thing that a lot of authors find themselves struggling with because most of us are not great at marketing. Most of us have a very low distribution, and if it's coming out of pocket, we're limited by whatever funds we have access to. Because if, like me, you have to work a real job aside from being an author, most of that money is going towards paying bills, having to pay for childcare needs or food, groceries, car payments, you name it, it's there. So after all those bills come out, you have to work with whatever's left. All right, so this is one of the first challenges that most authors deal with, is that marketing and distribution. The next one that we deal with is quality control. Quality control is a big one, because without any kind of editorial oversight, a lot of independent authors need to invest in professional editing, proofreading, and design. Now, when you are going through one of those traditional publishers, they take care of all of that for you. They find the designer. They do all the layout stuff. They do all the editing for you. They send you back the edits, and they work with you. Okay? When you are independent, when you are self-published, you are either doing the editing yourself, which can get really time-consuming if you're not geared towards editing, or you have to pay for somebody out of pocket. Now, the fun thing is you can find editors who are decent. You can find them online. They're not super expensive. And there are some people here locally that do editing and proofreading, but that creates a whole list of other issues that you have to pay attention to. And I did something on this a couple months ago where we were talking about the editing process and what to look for in an editor. And I have a whole playlist of that on my YouTube channel as well, and it's called What is Editing? Yes?
Do you have some people you recommend for that?
There are people I recommend in that video playlist on YouTube. There is one locally. I don't know if she's still operating because it's been a couple of years. But her name is Debbie, and she calls herself what does she call herself? The editing professional?
Is she on the internet?
She might still have her website active. It's been a couple of years since I've talked with her. But there are a lot of platforms where you can find editing services for not too expensive. Fiverr is one of them. Upwork is another.
Is your material safe?
Yes, and you are backed by a money-back guarantee through those websites.
And you have to worry about it being stolen.
You don't have to. Because the way you can do it is you can pay it in milestones. So especially like Upwork, like if you have like X number of pages, and you set a deadline for them, if they get the first few pages done before that first deadline, they get a partial payment, and then they get a next payment when the next milestone is hit. So that's kind of how it works. I used to do some of that editing on Upwork a few years ago, and it's really competitive, so you have to be really good at it. But one of the things I found on there is that you will get people who will try to pan somebody else's writing off as their own. I found when I was doing an editing job back in 2018 or 19, and the guy was trying to pan off this written work as his own, and it was literally a ripoff of Harry Potter, like to the point where he started using, partway through the manuscript, he was using the names. And I'm like, I cannot in good conscience work on this. Here's your money back. I don't want to be involved in whatever you're doing because I don't want to have a copyright infringement lawsuit thrown my way. I can't afford it. There are ways to go about finding professional editing and proofreading and design for you. I've looked into kind of developing those skills. For one, being a writer, having to do a lot of editing myself and a lot of proofreading, I've gotten really used to doing that, so I do a lot of my own editing now. As far as
do you also do screenplays?
I have very few. Nothing has been produced yet, and there are tools that are out there for you to work on that as well, and I can provide some of those for you later on. But design is a big one because everyone thinks that they need to have like this perfect design. Find a designer. You can find them again on Fiverr. For like my book series, my fantasy series, I am not a graphic artist. I'm terrible at drawing, and so what I have done is for the maps especially, I went on, for the first 4 books, I had someone professionally draw those maps. And the first one cost me about $50 or $60. The next one cost me about the same amount. because it was the same artist, and then I used that same artist again for the third map that I did for my fourth book, and she was kind enough to give me a discount, but it still ran me close to $100 because her prices had changed in a couple of years since I last used her. And since then, I've come to find other tools that I can use for that map making, but it doesn't come out nearly to the same quality as what she had produced. That being said, this is one of those challenges. If you can find other people who are great with this kind of stuff, who can do the editing, who can do the proofreading, who can do the design for you, I would recommend doing that because it's a huge time saver. The next one, legal and copyright issues. This is a big one because authors need to be aware of copyright laws, contract rights, and other legal issues. And now, the moment you publish something, if you've put the copyright symbol in your book at some point in your manuscript and you've put it into publication, it's officially copyrighted. However, you need to CYA, cover your, I'm not going to say the word because we've got kids present, but you want to make sure that you are covered. I highly recommend going in, applying for a copyright on your materials, because at that point you are protected. Now, the fun thing about copyright laws is that they last for the duration of your lifespan if you are the author. And there is a set time that the copyright continues to last after an author passes away, before that content becomes public domain. All right? Now, here is the fun thing, is that those laws, thanks in part, a large part to Disney, have been constantly expanded on. So it used to be something like 50 years after the death of the author that works and characters and stuff like that fell into public domain. Just a moment. But because of Disney wanting to hold on to their trademarks and hold on to their characters and their versions of public domain characters, they've been pushing it back. So it's now like something like 72 to 75 years. But there are still a lot of characters and a lot of stories out there that are public domain currently that you can mess with. What was your question, James? That's how it used to be originally, with the original copyright laws. It's expanded now. So, for example, characters like Sherlock Holmes, characters from The Wizard of Oz, those characters, those stories are now public domain. You can have fun with them. Characters like Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman. Unless they do not mirror the versions that we saw in like the Universal Pictures movies or something like that, totally usable. There are like the original characters from Star Trek won't be coming up for public domain until like the 2040s or 2050s. But in the next 10 years, characters like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, the original iterations from the 1930s, they will be. So you gotta have to be careful with that. You need to be aware of what is and what is not public domain. You can actually go onto Google, search what characters are public domain. It will tell you if they're currently or when they will become public domain. But you have to be careful. Characters like Superman, for example, we know of Superman being able to fly and all these other cool powers. He's incredibly buffed out when it comes to superpowers. Like, he is unstoppable. This is why making a Superman video game is incredibly hard to do, because like the things that would otherwise hurt another character don't hurt him unless they have access to kryptonite or magic. But something to consider, when Superman was originally created in the early 1930s, he couldn't fly. So if you do a version of Superman that can fly, that's a more modern uptake, and that can actually get you sued by DC Comics and Warner Brothers, because in the 1930s up until like the early 1940s, Superman didn't fly. He could jump tall buildings in a single bound, but he couldn't fly. So be careful about that. Our next problem is distribution challenges. This falls into the first problem that we run into with the marketing and distribution. Self-published authors often face difficulties getting their books into physical stores. This is something I have faced. Okay? Barnes & Noble can't just order copies of my book because the way I've gone through the process of publishing. I haven't gone through a traditional publisher. I published myself independently through Kindle Direct Publishing. And because of that, the distribution is print on demand, which means people can go onto the Barnes & Noble website and order my book. It sends a signal back to Amazon. Amazon then prints a copy of that book and sends it out to them. Okay? Print on demand. They don't keep printed copies in stores. You know where the collection of printed copies are? They're at my house. I'm the publisher, which means in order for me to get my books into, say, Barnes & Noble Visalia or Barnes & Noble up in Fresno, I would have to go to them, fill out a consignment form, provide them with copies of the books, and we split the cost. Or we split the income from that. I don't remember what the split is. I think it's like something like 60-40 for the author and the store respectively. But different stores, different companies have different policies on that. It gets very difficult. At one point we had a bookstore where the old Generation Gap used to be on the corner of 8th and Irwin Street. And I offered them copies of my books. None of my copies sold because they just didn't have the distribution. There wasn't the market for that store. Most people didn't even know the store existed because there wasn't a whole lot of advertisement. At one point, when I had my first 3 books out, I had DJ's Collectibles. They had copies of my books available for sale. They didn't sell there because people don't go into DJ's Collectibles to go buy books. They go in there to buy comic books. They go in there to buy collectibles and trading cards. They don't buy actual books. Thankfully, though, people do check out books at the library, and that's been very good for me. But distribution is very, very challenging. So you have to figure out how you can get those books distributed. Local bookstores, independent bookstores, are probably your best resource at first. Yes, James?
So when you check out a book at the library, the author gets something?
No, that's not how it works. What happens is, if it gets checked out of the library, it then allows that book to be read by somebody, and they become more aware of the fact that this author has work out there. Did you have a question? Okay, I thought I saw your hand go up. All right, our number 5, lack of support. This is a big one out there. A lot of authors go into this thinking that they have 0 support. They may feel isolated and unsupported without any guidance of a traditional publishing company. When you have a traditional publishing company backing what you're doing as an author, you've got moral support from your agent, because your agent only succeeds when you succeed. They're incentivized to keep you motivated, because otherwise they don't make any money. The publisher is incentivized to get you moving and motivated, because again, if the books aren't done, if they don't sell, they don't make money, you don't make money. There's a mutually assured success rate there. When you're doing things independently, it's all on the author. It's all on me. So when I put a book out there, when I market it, when I share about it, when I talk about it, when I go to sell it, it's all on me. And it can feel very isolating, it can feel very unsupported. One of the biggest things for me is having family members who are like, oh, this is great, you wrote a book, you published a book, great. And then they don't read it, they don't buy it, they don't talk about it, they don't share about it, nothing. And it kills me, because I've got family members who've gotten copies of my book, my first one, and they're like, oh, it's one of those fantasy books with hard to pronounce words. And they just shelve it. It gets very, very harsh for me. Meanwhile, I've got another book that I published a couple of years ago, and my mom keeps sharing it with people. She's given copies out to people. left and right. She keeps talking about it when she goes to all these work events, and people are interested in it. They've read it, they liked it, they've reviewed it. She herself has never read it. She's gotten maybe like one page in, and she's like, oh, I just can't read. And part of that is she's dyslexic. I get it. Dyslexia can really wreck the idea of reading for people, but it can feel like that part of the support structure is missing. And there are ways to get around this. So each of my solutions that I will come to in a little bit deal with each one of these challenges. Now there are some additional challenges that I said I would talk about. If you notice, some of these challenges had little asterisk marks next to them. So the first one, so here's some other challenges. Financial investment. If you're independent, it's all on you. You don't have the backing of a traditional publisher. Time management is a big one. All right, I'm a parent. I'm an adult. Sometimes I don't want to be an adult, but I have to put responsibilities first. And so my time management is circulated around where my responsibilities lie and what I have to accomplish. If I've got my son with me at any given time, I cannot be focused on writing. I have to be focused on making sure he's okay and not trying to unalive himself by jumping off the counter from my kitchen onto the dining table and then onto the recliner. Yes, he does that. The next one is building credibility. That is a really hard thing to do because you have to build up credibility with potential customers. And that is not an easy thing to do. When I first started going out, because my books are fantasy adventure, I was partnered up with DJ's Collectibles for a variety of different events. I would sell my books at those events. And a lot of people saw the original covers like, oh, cool. And they'd pick it up because they thought it was a graphic novel or a comic book. And they just started flipping through the pages and they saw just walls of text because it's an actual book. And they immediately put it down because there was no pictures. Because they expected, hey, we're at a comic shop, at an event for a comic shop, for free comic book day. And this guy's book does not have comics in it. But the cover art makes it look like it does. So I had to change my cover art to help build better credibility. But I have found readers, I have found people who are interested in the books, and I have been building that credibility. And it takes a while, but it can be done and it's worth doing. One of the ways that you can do that is by partnering with other authors and with book groups and stuff like that, and they can help get you out there. Another big one is dealing with rejection. And this is a big one. Because when we're told no, no can be very, very defeating. Whether it's, no, I don't think I'm interested in your book, or no, I don't think I'm going to buy your book today. There is a sense of loss, there's a sense of pain there, because you're expecting people to like your book. You want people to like your book. The funny thing is people do actually judge books by their covers. So we have to be careful about that. But dealing with rejection can be very defeating. I've known a lot of people who have written, they've done creative writing classes, and they write some great stories, but then the first person that saw their book and said, no, that's not for me, it shot them down. In fact, for me, my first creative writing class that I took in college, I was over at COS in Visalia, and no joke, my instructor, he thought he was God's gift to creative writers because he wrote one book of poetry. Great. Cool. The rest of the time he was macrameing himself into a sofa. But he rejected pretty much everything I wrote for that class, and at that point I decided, you know what? I'm not going to go and pursue writing. I'm going to go into law enforcement. I didn't, thankfully, because I probably would have gotten shot very quickly. But I was dealing with rejection, and that was coming from a teacher. Someone who should have been encouraging me. Someone who should have been helping me build my skills and build me up. Now, here's the first asterisk that we get to. And I'll go into more detail on this in just a little bit. There are a lot of scammers out there who are interested in making a quick buck off of your work. These are people who say that they're marketers. These are people who say that they are publishers. These are people who say that they are digital artists who want to help you with your cover design or your character design or whatever. They're out there, and you're going to encounter them. The next one. Make a point of researching IPs, that's intellectual properties, that are available in the public domain, such as classic literary characters. The further back you go, the more you're going to find characters that are public domain. This is why authors like Seth Grahame-Smith have been able to make adaptations of characters. One of Seth Grahame-Smith's first books that he put out that I'm aware of is a book called Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which they turned into a movie a few years ago. He took the characters from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice book, a book that a lot of people love, I hate. I've read it. The characters are insipid, and I wish to God that Mr. Darcy just escaped that whole situation. I felt so bad for the man. But Seth Grahame-Smith was able to take Jane Austen's work and adapt it into a zombie apocalypse. And it sold millions of copies and got turned into a movie. So have fun with it. Find out what those IPs are that are available for public domain and try to come up with something really cool. All right? The next asterisk I want to put up is local bookstores are often willing to promote, but can be limited in how they carry your titles. Okay? What I'm trying to do right now is I'm actually trying to partner with Visalia Barnes & Noble to set up an author event where I'm able to promote my first book a little bit more. And because I have a book coming out in February, that's a collection of short stories, I'm able to promote that one as well. But I have to sign that consignment form, and I have to partner with them to sell a limited number of copies. They're not going to just order copies of my book because there's not a demand for that. All right? Now, this is where we're going to talk about scams for just a moment. This is going to be part of an actual conversation I had on Instagram with this account called Author Sync. That's sync as in S-Y-N-K, synchronicity or synchronization, not as in kitchen sink. And now their account says that they're elevating stories with Author Sync, your words, our passion, read, review, interview, podcast. And I thought, hey, welcome, come on in, have a seat. And I thought, how cool would this be to partner with them? Maybe they can help get some distribution. And so I reached out to them and I said, do you have any interview slots available? Now I want you guys to pay attention to their responses because their responses are going to be very, very telling. And I apologize if it's a little blurry. I tried to get this as focused as I possibly could. Okay? But they said, hey, yes, that's available, so shall we share our prices and details for it? My question is, you charge for interviews? Now, I do author interviews on, yeah.
My first thing that is a scam is the grammar.
Yeah.
Whenever they scam, that you just, they
Yeah.
respond and their grammar's off, then you
Grammar is,
know, by,
I'm glad you picked up on that because we'll come back to that when we're talking about red flags here. But, so when I do my author interviews, I don't charge anybody for the interviews. The reason being is because I want to collaborate with these other authors to help promote their work, just like I would hope that they would promote mine. When I connect with people who do podcasts, I invite them to participate so I can help promote their podcast because they're helping me promote my work. We don't charge each other for that because it's mutually beneficial. So rather than just responding to my question about charging, they send me pictures, these are screenshots of their messages with prices. $200 for a reviews package, $350 for articles and blogs package, and $5.99 for Amazon reviews and articles in following newspapers. And they list USA Today, Wall Street Journal, The Guardian, The New York Times, Los Angeles Times, and The Washington Post. All right? That sounds great on the surface. But they're wanting to charge me anywhere from $200 to $600 for their services. And all I asked them is, why do you charge for interviews? They still haven't answered the question. They said, we'll provide you with the sales mentioned against each package. So ranging anywhere from 750 to 1750 as far as the number of sales that you would get. I said, how do you guarantee the sales? We'll establish mechanism for providing the sales. So they haven't answered the question. We work with commission-based agencies across the globe having a chain network of thousands of readers. They circulate your book and subscription throughout their networking chains, and that's how we provide guaranteed sales/buyers for your books. With a track record of successfully completing 7.5 thousand projects without a single complaint, authors consistently prefer our services. My question is, as opposed to what? Furthermore, we ensure our clients' peace of mind. We offer a full money-back policy. If by any chance we miss a single sale, we guarantee a total refund directly to your PayPal wallet. Anybody else's red flag meter going off? So I respond, what is your track record with books in my genre? I'm getting specific here. So they send me these. These are screenshots of a conversation with an author that they've worked with. I put that in quotations. Our most recent project with @Susanna Clark _, she got more than 3,000 sales through us for her book. I said, okay, that doesn't answer my question. So let me preface. I clicked on that ad on Instagram to see the profile. The profile didn't have anything posted in the last year. The only post came from a year before that, and there was only like 5 or 6 of them. Most of them showed screenshots of a book. It showed screenshots of the author, but these were actually taken from the author's own webpage, not social media. In fact, when I went to that author's webpage to click on their official site and everything, it said that the only social media platform that they used was Facebook, not Instagram. Interesting. Also, the book that they were referencing was more than 15 years old. Okay? So, it continues. As we done 7.5 thousand projects, and we working on all genres, but most of authors don't want to share conversation and feedback with others. That's why unable to share U-Book, which is your genres promoted by us. There are words coming out of my brain right now that make me, I can't use those words because children are present. I love that. As we done. God, there are kids in Baltimore with better grammar. All right. I said, you haven't answered my question, so let me rephrase it. I'm not asking for names. I want to know how often you've been successful. What is the percentage of fully satisfied by your services versus those who were not when it comes to promoting books in my genre? Now, if you were responding to my question, what's the first question that you would ask me? What's my genre? Or you could look at my profile and see what my genre is. They responded with, as we done a lot of project and costumer satisfaction is our top priority, and 97% customer is enjoy and extremely happy, and 3% said it's good eye. Oh, it's getting worse. It's getting worse, but it's so much better. Because now they've gone from 100% satisfaction to 97% satisfaction.
Changing the facts. If you need the facts, this is done by robots.
It's a mix of things, I think.
Did you just go on just some
I carried this out for as long as I possibly could, because this was, I kind of like trolling the trolls. Okay? I said, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about your entire customer base. I am asking about authors specifically in my genre. What is the ratio of satisfied customers who write in my genre versus those who are not satisfied? This is a simple question, and you have not been clear. You have been dancing around the subject, and you're providing me with information that I didn't ask for. We've done 500 project with war and historical title and 100% satisfied. Okay, then you're still not answering my question because I don't write war and historical fiction. And if this is how you answer questions, I can only imagine how crappy you are at actually promoting my books. Go pound sand. They respond, could you clarify which genre you're referring to? It would help to delve into specific details about the authors and their audience with that genre. Better, because now I've ticked them off. I said, you could have easily looked at the information on my Instagram bio, or checked out my story, or looked at some of my posts. Instead, you gave me information I did not ask for, so forget it. I won't be doing business with you. Okay, so that's the end of the conversation right there. I actually shared this whole thing in a group of stories about a month or so ago on Instagram, and it got a lot of great comments from people who were like, "Thank you for sharing this. Thank you," because the other authors deal with this on a consistent basis. Now, here are some red flags when you're trying to identify if you're dealing with a scam. First and foremost, 100% success rate or something very, very close to it. Okay? At no point is a marketing team going to be 100% successful. And the reason being is because failure happens. Failure is going to happen in any market. It's going to happen in any job description. It could be you're working as a teacher, you fail to be the best teacher possible. At some point, you're going to have a mess up. Being an author, being a writer, you're going to have failure after failure before you even hit success. Okay? A 100% success rate is impossible. Number two, ignoring or refusing to answer questions or providing partial answers. If you notice, I was asking very specific questions, and I had to ask the same question multiple times before I finally got them to even consider what I was asking them. Number three, no familiarity with or a lack of research about your genre or work. A lot of these scams will cold call you on social media, or they will send you an email if you have an official website. I get this kind of stuff all the time. Most of the emails I get about my website are from some app developer in India wanting to sell me on building an app for video games or whatever. And I'm like, I don't have that. I'm an author. I don't need an app for my website. My website is mobile friendly. I don't need that. So I usually just block them, delete them, report them, whatever. This kind of stuff pops up on Instagram. They will add you on Instagram. They'll see that you're an author. They'll add you, and then they, without even getting to know you or just following your posts, they start it's almost like love bombing, where they just they like a whole string of your posts. Usually it's like the most recent 5 to 10 posts. They'll like that all at the same time. Then they do the same thing with every clip on your story. And then they slide right into the DM and try to sell you on the market. Now, this last one, I actually reached out to them because I want to see how legit they were. But obviously in the conversation we could tell that they weren't. But usually when there's no familiarity with what you write, or they haven't done their research, they haven't even bothered to look at your profile as an author, that tells you that they are not worth your time. Fourth, they struggle to respond in your native language. It doesn't matter if your native language is English, if it's Arabic, if it's Swahili, if it's Hindu, or Spanish, or Spanglish maybe. Spanglish. They speak down in Texas. If they struggle to respond in your native language, if the grammar is so broken that the messages don't make sense, chances are you're dealing with someone who is not as familiar with what they're talking about as they say. I had another incident pop up in mid-December where a publicity or marketing group reached out to me. They wanted to sell me on their projects or on their marketing services. They said they're based out of Chicago, but they got really pushy about it. I told them I'm not in the market for it. I don't have the money for it right now. And I said, you know what, tell you what, let me sit on it for a couple of weeks, come back to me at the beginning of January. They literally reached out to me yesterday. And I'm like, look, can't do it. This is, well, when would you like to move forward? Can't do that. I'll reach out to you. But when will you reach out to us? Okay, I'm done with this conversation. And they were getting pushy. And like when I started asking them the same questions about like what their success rate was, their success rate was 63%. That's how successful they were. They couldn't even give me information about books in my genre, which was really, really cringy for me. Now, if they had had something like 70 to 80%, I would have been more open to that because that tells me, hey, they have had some failures, but they're more successful than they have failed. 63% for me, having been a former teacher, that's a D minus. That doesn't work for me. So these are some red flags. So if you are really wanting to pursue being a writer, these are some things you need to pay attention to if you start putting yourself out on social media or promoting yourself on social media. Now we're going to turn our attention to solutions. Okay? So this one is starting with the marketing and distribution problem that we ran into at the beginning. Start small. Okay? Build your following locally and on social media before branching out. That's what I've done. I started in my local community here in Hanford. That's how I got my start. I started building my following locally. I do local events over at DJ's Collectibles. I do local author events here at the library. And I'm getting to the point where I think I've kind of saturated my market because I've had fewer and fewer sales. And part of that has to do with the availability of other content that people like. Fantasy genre is a niche market. It fluctuates. Sometimes fantasy it's right there in the zone where things are super popular. In others, it's not. It just depends on where you are and where you're marketing. But I've gone to comic conventions in Visalia. I've gone to comic conventions here in Hanford. I've gone as far as Modesto. And I was able to sell a lot more books in those other markets because of where I was selling. It's important to make connections with other established authors. Most of what I do on social media is establishing myself with other authors. I do look for people who read my genre, but most of the people I'm connecting with is with other authors. Why? Because I run my YouTube channel specifically for promoting other authors. And the cool thing is, authors are readers too. Now, most of them are not going to be reading my genre. They're going to be reading other stuff. But in making those connections, those authors have connections to people who do marketing, who do art and design, who do proofreading and editing and stuff like that. And I'm able to find out who they follow and connect with them to continue to build those connections. And then, you want to research legit literary promotional firms and their prices. Don't just agree to the first promo or marketing group that you come in contact with, because you want to be successful. The other thing you want to be careful about doing is when you're looking for those promotional firms, even if their prices are good, you need to find out what they're selling you on. Are they going to sell you on actual readers, or are they going to sell you on just getting reviews? And are those reviews going to be honest? Now, I worked with a pair of marketers based out of Indiana called Twins in Talent. One of them is a published author as well, but they work together in tandem. It's a pair of sisters that they do marketing for books specifically. And what they do, their lowest package was $100. They spend about 2 or 3 weeks finding people who specifically read your genre, and they say, hey, we've got this book that we're promoting. we're working with the author. The author will send you an advanced reader copy digitally. Read it, give it an honest review. Most of the reviews I got out of that were pretty decent. I had some people who did not care for the book. One person, I had one gal give me a 3-star review on Amazon because, and in her words, it wasn't spicy enough. And this is because she's gotten used to reading Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros and some of those other romantasy type books. And honestly, it's great if that's your genre, but it's killing it for the rest of us who write hardcore fantasy. So yeah, and that's part of the reason why George R.R. Martin gets so much love, because his books got really, really spicy, even if that wasn't the focus of the books. All right, so that's solution number 1. Solution number 2, don't do all of your quality control yourself. Look for editors on platforms like Fiverr, for editors who can do the work relatively cheap. If you know local editors, find them, work with them. Another thing you can do is find beta readers to help you fine-tune your story before it goes to publication. That's one of the best things you can do. A buddy of mine from New Jersey, he's an author, he's got a great thriller series called The Circle. And when his second book was getting ready to go out, he sent me an advanced reader copy and asked me to read through it and see what I liked, see what I didn't, things that highlighted and stood out to me. And I gave him feedback on the book, and that feedback was then applied. And it was nice because I got a nice thank you in the introduction of his book, in the acknowledgments section. But find those beta readers who can go through your manuscript, who are interested in what story you're trying to tell, because you can get a lot of feedback from that. They can tell you what's working and what doesn't. Some people will be nitpicky. They will like, for my 5th book, I sent out 3 beta copies. One person didn't even give me feedback because she got busy with life. One guy got so busy that he only read the prologue, and his recommendation was change the title from prologue to prelude, because prologues usually take place at a separate time but are still connected with the main plot thread, whereas the prelude, it wasn't really a prologue, because usually prologues are kind of disconnected from the rest of the story. They're usually like an isolated incident. But so he got a little nitpicky on that. But I wish he had given me a little bit more insight onto the rest of the story. The third person read through the whole thing, loved it, gave me a few pointers for things that she thought would work better, made it stronger. I made those changes, and it worked. One of the biggest feedbacks I did get from the gal that couldn't finish the book was that I had a really long chapter. She recommended breaking it into 2 parts. I did that, it worked. So find beta readers. Beta readers are usually free, because there are so many people out there who are looking for a good book that they don't have to buy it. Your third solution, register your copyright. You can copyright your content directly. You just go to the U.S. Copyright Office. There's a website for it. It's really simple. You pay a one-time non-refundable fee, and it's copyrighted. And if you don't want to go all the way through that, you can use LegalZoom or other similar law services to help with the process. But from what I understand, the process at the Copyright Office is fairly streamlined. Okay? I don't know what the fee is. I think those fees have gone up in the last few years, but check it out. It doesn't hurt. And the nice thing is, and one other thing is that if you are doing independent publishing, make sure you buy your own ISBN numbers. That's your international sales book number. Okay? So when you look on the back of your book and you see that 13-digit code underneath the barcode, that's your ISBN number. That number is associated specifically with that book title and the publisher. If you are your own publisher, that is your own. And that's the reason why I say this is because there are a couple of great companies out there who help with independent publishing. It doesn't cost you much of anything. Kindle Direct Publishing is one of them. That's who I go through. But there's another company called Draft Digital. They're free to use for the most part. They do offer some additional services on top of the free stuff, but they both offer free ISBN numbers for your paperback edition. Do not do that. I highly recommend that you buy your own ISBN numbers. You can do so very easily through a website called Bowkers. They broker ISBN numbers. You can buy, the last time I bought anything was like in 2015 or 16. I bought 10 for $250. And I haven't even used all 10 of those yet. Okay? Because, and the reason why I say this is because if you use one of the free ones offered by KDP or Drafted Digital, they own that ISBN number, which means you then struggle with who technically owns the rights of your book. Okay? The other thing is, and this is something I encountered back in July, I randomly will go, every so often will go on and do a search for my book series to see where I can find it, if I can find physical copies anywhere. I found a bookstore in Minnesota, just outside of Minneapolis, selling my books. Now, they were doing it on the print to order method, but it was and they were available on their website, not in their physical stores. But what I found interesting was that when it listed who the publisher was, it listed it as Ingram, as in Ingram Sparks. And Ingram Sparks is another website that you can go through for self-publishing. Ingram Sparks, though, as a distributor, is they get a little fishy sometimes, and they will try to take credit for somebody else's work, even because they're the distributor. And so I asked that bookstore, I said, hey, why is it showing Ingram Sparks? I'm my own publisher. It should be saying GKJ Publishing, not Ingram. And they're like, this is what was presented to us by the distributor. They gave me the contact information for Ingram Sparks. I reached out to Ingram Sparks. I said, hey, look, you guys are taking credit for my work. You have not worked on this project. This is not something that you have tied to. Consider this your official cease and desist letter. Within 24 hours, their information was changed, and the website that bookseller in Minnesota had, it started changing and updating for GKJ Publishing.
Do you get any money for that?
Well, if anybody purchased books off the website, I would get money for that. Ingram Sparks shouldn't get a dime for that because they aren't distributing it. It's all done through Amazon.
So they weren't getting any money, but they
Correct.
weren't getting money.
Correct. And so you want to be careful that that doesn't happen. Number 4, get plugged in. Sign up for events, whether it's conventions, local markets. I've tried getting tied in with the Thursday night markets. That is a bear to get into because the city wants you to have like $1 million insurance policy. And I'm like, what's going to happen? I sell books. What are you worried about people getting a paper cut? And they're like, and I said, no one's going to sue the city because they got a paper cut off of the book. But they want to protect themselves. And so it makes it very, very hard. But there are local events that you can get connected with. Whenever those Ohana Comic Cons come through town, I've done a couple of those. I've done one of those in Fresno. I did one in Visalia. I've gone to other comic book shops in other parts of the valley to promote my books. Getting signed up for conventions is a great way to do that. Wherever you can to begin the distribution of your books. And then talk with local booksellers about getting your books on their shelves. And that's what I'm trying to do with Barnes & Noble now. I need to talk, there's a bookstore over in downtown Exeter that I want to talk with, and I know that there's a local bookstore in Clovis, and there's one in Visalia that I'm going to talk to about getting my books over there as well. But find out where you can get plugged in. Okay, if you've got something out, it's ready to be sold, ready to be distributed, find a way to get that done. Solution number 5, We want to find supporters, whether it's local or online writing groups, whether it's book clubs, whether it's your local library and events at that library, social media connections, whether it's podcasts or interviews, and then crowdfunding campaigns. I know of a couple of authors who start a Kickstarter campaign to get the money to promote their books. It helps them. They raise something like a few $1,000s, and they're able to use that money for the marketing, for the distribution, for the promotion of their books, and they're all independent publishers. So these are all great ways to get yourself started, to find the support you need. Can you publish a book without paying a single dime? Absolutely, you can do it. You can publish a book for free, but getting the distribution out there is tough, because like when I publish a book through Kindle Direct Publishing, I have to, in order to have a physical collection of those books to sell back to people who are interested, I have to buy those copies first. And depending on the size of the book, and the number of pages, and how big it is, that cost. And now I'm buying it wholesale, but on average, the books in my fantasy series run me about $5.50 to $6 per book. And if I'm having to order several of those, that's going to cost me a lot of money. All right. In fact, the last time I did a big purchase order, I only had the first 2 books out, and I was doing a comic convention over in Visalia or Tulare, and I ordered a total of I want to say like 200 copies of each book, or no, 100 copies of each book, and that came out to like something like $1,500. So normally now what I do is I will keep at least 10 copies on hand. I'll go and I'll make that purchase, because even though it's done through Amazon, I still have to pay for that shipping. Okay? And books get heavy. They get very, very heavy. So like the new book I have coming out in February, it's called Midnight Playground. It's a collection of short stories. It's less than 100 pages. To get a copy of that wholesale for me is going to cost me less than $3. But then I still have to pay for the shipping to get all those copies out to me. So something to consider. So yeah. Now we're going to talk about actual writing challenges. Okay? So these aren't things that are holding you back. These are things meant to support you, to help you to improve what you're doing, and to help you grow as an author. It's always necessary to further your craft as a writer, to help you get out of your comfort zone and to stretch your skills. As writers, we develop a comfort zone, things that we like to write, words and phrases that we like to use. And it is important to get out of that comfort zone, because if you're not going to get out of that comfort zone, you're not going to grow. My start was in writing fantasy fiction. But with the writing competitions that I've participated in, it's actually pushed me into writing other genres. And surprisingly, I had fun writing those genres in a way that I never thought I would. In fact, I had 2 competitions that required me to write. One was like a first date scenario. The other one was a romantic comedy situation. And I've never written romantic comedy. I've never written anything that you might see on like a Hallmark Channel special. And but my mom, she's obsessed with those movies on Hallmark Channel. She loves those things. The Christmas in July crap, she loves that. So I channeled all that into these 2 stories, and they're actually great stories. They turned out to be really fun for me to write, because I wrote something that would not just appeal to me, but it appeals to other readers. And so it was a lot of fun for me to do that, because it allowed me to expand what I was doing. Now, there are a couple of competitions that I personally participate in. The first one is called NYC Midnight. This is their website, nycmidnight.com. The other one is called Writers Playground, and their website is Writers Playground LLC. And both of them can be followed on social media. They promote the competitions that they have going on. In fact, Writers Playground just started their 10th short story challenge on Thursday night. I'm participating in that. This is my second one with them. And I'll go into these in a little bit more detail. So, NYC Midnight, it's an East Coast, New York-based competition that happens throughout the year. They have, these are the list of challenges that they offer. 100-word microfiction. I haven't participated in that one. 250-word microfiction. I have participated in that one multiple times. 500-word fiction, which I've participated in that one a couple times. They do flash fiction, rhyming story, which I think they've got the rhyming story coming up in February. And right now they're doing their screenwriting challenge. And then their short story competition is going on right now. Yes, they just, no, in a couple of weeks they start their short story competition. I almost signed up for that one, but I didn't want to overextend myself because I was already doing Writers Playground. Yeah, James?
So, you were the one with the ice cream?
Oh, no, that one didn't win anything. I know, it was a great one, but it was fun. That was one of my my romantic comedy ones, and that one was a 500-word short story. But the way that NYC Midnight does things for their microfiction and their 500-word short story competitions, and even the regular short story competitions, for the most part, it's fairly much the same. But what they do for the shorter pieces is they give you a genre. Well, first of all, they lump you into a group of other writers. So they look at the number of writers that they have signed up for the competition. They lump you into a smaller group with a certain selection of writers, and then your group gets a specific genre, an action that has to take place, and an object that has to be included in the story. Okay, and you have to figure it out and work it out and write within those boundaries. And you have 100, 250, and 500 words respectively for that. And that can be a challenge in and of itself, because especially with the 250 word short stories, those microfiction challenges, I'll get to your question in just a moment, James. Those are challenging because you're having to learn how to say more with less. It's all about strong language usage, strong descriptions, making sure that the story works. Because with the microfiction, it's not like 250 or less. You have to do exactly 250. With the 100-word microfiction challenge, it's exactly 100 words. Nothing less, nothing more. With the 500-word challenge, that's where you get a little bit more flexibility. You don't have to go right up to the 500. You can do just a little bit under. But you need to have something substantial in that short story. And with Writers Playground is also on the East Coast. This is focused on just short story writing. The majority of it is 3,000 words. You're given a list of characters, you're given a list of settings, and an action or an object that needs to be included in the story. Now, the one that I worked on back in August for Writers Playground, that one was a lot of fun. It brought out the most writing content I have done in the last 2 years. Writing almost 3,000 words for that short story. It came out to a little over 2,800 words from beginning to end. And they liked it. They liked it so much that I placed in the top 15 out of 642 submissions. And because I was within the top 20, they offered the submissions that were listed at 11 through 20 as having the opportunity of being featured on their website, and I made $50 off of that. That was the most I've ever made for just a short story. Okay, that was very, very good for me. It boosted my my confidence in my writing abilities, because they really struggled with putting me in the top 10. They wanted to put me in the top 10. That was the feedback that I got from them. They liked my story. There's just a few stories that beat me out, and that's okay. I was still within that top 15 out of 642 entries. That's huge. James, you had a question. Okay. Now, the competition
I have
that...
a question.
Yeah, go for it.
What software do they take? when you do
Usually they will accept it as a PDF or a document, like a doc file. It depends on how you want to do it because it depends on what they find works best. I've sent them PDFs because it's already there.
Do they request it? Do they say, please send us a PDF? Or
No.
do you prefer a
Some competitions do prefer PDF just because it's easy. It's an easier file to open because then you don't have to worry about because if I'm using an older version of Microsoft Word, for example, I know I'm still one of those idiots who still uses Microsoft Word. But if you're using Microsoft Word and you're using an older version and you send it to them and they've got a newer version, it may not read the fonts the same way. And so when you have the PDF, the fonts are locked in. All they have to do is open the file.
And while you're talking about that, what do you recommend as far as writing? Would you say like you still prefer Microsoft Word? Do you like Dragon actually speaking?
I've never actually used Dragon. Someone tried to get me on that one, and I for one, I struggled to get it to work with my computer because my computer did not have a built-in CD drive to read the software, and now you don't have CD drives on anything anymore. It's all solid state. I just haven't gone through the process of using it. I prefer, it depends on what I'm doing. Longer projects, I prefer to write out everything by hand. But I have varied up what I use. So like the writing I did for that story I did for Writer's Playground back in August, I wrote that on my iPad on the Notes app. And then I transferred it to a Word document, and then from there made my edits and submission and did the submission. And the reason why I did that is because in the Notes app I could pull that up on my phone, I could pull that up on my Mac at home, I could pull it up on my iPad, and it updates automatically. So yeah. Now the other thing about Writer's Playground is that you can mix and match. So just because they give you a list of 5 characters and 5 settings doesn't mean you have to lock into one character in one setting. You can mix and match and use any of the elements as long as you meet the requirements and the 3,000 word count. The fun thing is, so I reached out to them because when I got the prompt for that last writing competition that Writer's Playground gave me, I was sitting at my parents' house and I was reading through the email and I'm sitting there trying to kind of just immediately work on an idea. And my mom and one of the couple of the characters, one was a clown, one was a goblin. And my mom immediately said, well, why don't you write a story about a goblin clown? She was joking and teasing me because I hate clowns. I am terrified of clowns. To the point where someone in college at a Halloween party tried to give me a hug while dressed as a clown, and he ended up getting clobbered. After I told him repeatedly, don't touch me. So that gave me the prompt for this story, and I had so much fun with it. I was able to work in some historical references. I was able to work in some linguistic and cultural references, and it was so much fun for me because I looked into the folklore and the etymology of goblins and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. So I got the prompts for this one the other night, and I'm already working on. I've already got over 800 words written for this story, and I just started writing last night. So once you get when you have those creative juices flowing because of these kinds of competitions, these are really great for boosting your strength and boosting your skills as a writer. And I highly recommend signing up whenever you can.
Question, is this your full-time job? Right?
No, I wish. I wish.
Are you a teacher still?
No, I haven't been teaching for a couple of years, but aside from doing these classes, but the job experiences that I've had have helped fuel what I do. I'm able to pull from those experiences. I'm able to understand, and I can apply that understanding and that knowledge and that experience into writing characters and settings and stuff like that. Yeah, James.
What's the other website called?
So there's nycmidnight.com and Writers Playground LLC. All right, so we're going to go for our writing prompt, and I'm actually taking a cue from NYC Midnight. This isn't one of their official prompts. I actually put this one together myself. But it says, read the following prompt and write a 250-word story, which with these requirements. Okay. Now, I understand that we have a short term before the class is over. We have like less than 20 minutes. Write as much as you can. Okay. But your genre is going to be action. Okay. You can make that funny. You can make that serious. However you want to play it off. Your action or verb that you have to include is chewing bubble gum. The object that you have to include, cowboy boots. Have fun with it. You guys have 15 minutes. Yeah.
Does it have to be bubblegum?
It has to be bubble. You know, the flavor of the bubble gum is up to you.
Or could it be a different type of gum?
I will allow the different type of gum. So long as they're chewing gum. Don't worry about counting words, just start writing. And for those of you online, I'm going to end the live stream. Thank you for joining.